Good morning and welcome to the SitRep for today, which is the 11th of November, Remembrance Day here in Australia, where we remember those who have fallen in battles, wars, times of conflict, those who have served, those who have given their lives so that we may live in such freedoms that we do. So remember at 11 o'clock today of the 11th month, the 11th day of the 11th month on the 11th hour. Take a minute. It's not asking too much, I don't think. There's a lot of minutes in a year. Here's just 1 minute where you just take a break. Take a break, stare at your feet for a little bit, and just have a think about that. Have a think about those who bravely put their face out there and their faces fell whilst facing the foes to the freedoms that we have today. Yes, lest we forget, Kieran, thank you very much. It's an early one this morning because I am actually heading into the Big Smoke to do some Remembrance Day stuff and got some meetings, and then I will be spending some time out bush this weekend, so I will not get a SitRep out for a number of days. So I thought I'd better get this out now. Well, not better get it out. It's not something I have to do, but I want to do it. I want to keep you informed. I hope you're well wherever you are today. For everyone who's listening to this or watching this, those of you on Instagram, those of you on YouTube, and those of you who are listening on the podcast version, wherever you're downloading your podcast from, thank you very much, as always, for tuning in, for watching, and hopefully there's something worthwhile in my ramblings today that inspires you to be better prepared, a more self-reliant human being, because that's my shtick. If you haven't watched this before, that's what I'm all about. All right, let's jump into it this morning. A lot of stuff, some geopolitical stuff. We'll probably touch on some American politics type stuff. And then we'll talk about, there's some earthquakes in there as well. I love talking about earthquakes. Not specifically love talking about earthquakes, but just highlighting them. So there's a couple of them that have happened overnight. Let's start with Russia. Russia orders retreat of troops across the Dnipro River. So this Kherson region, which is hotly contested at the moment, we've been seeing a lot of toing and froing, as always. Both sides have come out and say, hey, Russia's pulling back here. This is a great victory for Ukraine. Russia's obviously not saying that, but the interesting part here is that Russia is coming out and saying, oh, yes, we're pulling back. This is from Shoigu, who is the defense minister or the general? I can't remember. No, it's the defense minister. Came out and said, look, there's been Ukrainian attacks in this area. We're pulling back. We've got hundreds of thousands of civilians here that we actually don't want them to be involved in the war, in the fighting. So we're going to pull back, which on the surface seems like a pretty cool thing to do. Like, good on you. Well done. Here's something about war. For those who don't know stuff about war, War 101. Do not tell your enemy what you intend to do and then do it. Because you're just giving them an open playbook for them to affect you. So the fact that they've come out and said, oh, we're pulling back. Yeah, we're going to pull back from this. Like, warning alarms are going off in my head reading this. And I don't know how anyone else is reading any different. Why would all of a sudden Russia's defense minister come out and go, by the way, here's what we're intending to do. It's not like we're doing it. Here's what we are intending to do. Just so you know, Ukraine, just even playing field, right? Just let's, so we'll just put all our cards on the table. That's not how you play poker. All right? This should be a warning sign to anyone. I'm like, what's going on here? So anyway, that'll be something that I'm keeping my eye on. Very odd. Very odd indeed. I didn't order my stories this morning, by the way. Sometimes I put them in nice logical orderings. Today, I didn't. Let's jump into let's talk about, we'll stay with the Russian theme, okay? Let's jump into oil prices. Oil prices are primed to spike in the not too distant future. So what it would be our summer, I guess, Northern Hemisphere. For those of you who were watching or listening in the Northern Hemisphere, your winter. Fuel prices, oil prices are going to skyrocket. Why? Because in less than a month from today, there's going to be an embargo on seaborne Russian crude oil exports to the European Union. And as I continually say, that's going to obviously increase price, or it's going to increase demand within EU, which will increase price within EU, but it doesn't stay within the EU. Price increases, no matter what started them, ripple out throughout the world. So expect that. Expect increases in oil prices throughout the world, increases then flowing on to the pump. I got caught out and had to fill up at a station, or refuel my vehicle at a station yesterday that wasn't the cheapest that I could find, and it was at $2.48 a litre for diesel. $2.48 Australian dollaroos, that is, per litre. Let me do some maths here. Conversion rates for my American friends. I think it's like 3.8 litres in a gallon. All right. So that would be a gallon price. Let's say 4. Let's just call it 4. All right. Times 4. You're looking at $10 per gallon, Australian dollaroos. We're currently at like 65 cents for a US dollar. Sorry, 65 US cents per Australian dollar. So 65% of $10, $6.50. That makes sense? Somebody check my maths this morning. Anyway, $6.50 USD per gallon. So, yeah, and that's like normal day. That's kind of every day at the moment. That's not busting the bank. Kieran says $2.33 yesterday. Where you are, Kieran. I can't remember where you're at in the world, but I mean in Australia, obviously. But good morning to you, Norman Lacey, on YouTube also. So anyway, expect those prices to go up. As preppers, what are we doing? We're storing. We've got hopefully long-term storage of fuel. Long-term, I'm talking 6 to 12 months. That's the longest term you're probably going to get out of fuel, but we're rotating our stores. So Brookvale in Sydney, cool. Sydney generally cheaper than down here in the Canberra region, and especially when you start getting out rural areas, it gets a bit more expensive. Expect these price increases. Let's not be caught out by it, gang. Let's stockpile a little bit more now, and remember, keep rotating your stores as well. That way, you're always using cheaper fuel than what it is out there. All right, what other stories do we have here? Let's jump into this. German economy expected to face a $110 billion hit from high oil and gas prices. So I've been talking about this, how high oil and gas prices have been affecting everything, not just individual users within the area, not just within these areas like that sort of space, but they're shutting down manufacturing plants, or they're increasing cost of manufacturers, which are then flowing onto end users who are paying for those products. Well, they've done a bit of some calculus here and gone, it's going to be $110 billion hit that we're expecting to see. They didn't put a time period on this, but I think what they're saying is they're forecasting this, but this is within the next quarter, I think, or next financial year. Anyway, $110 billion, more than I can afford. And I think they're lowballing this figure, to be honest. This is an exorbitant amount, but really it can go up from here exponentially, and especially coming off the back of that last story that I was just talking about, where they're going to see increases in other factors as well, not just gas, but these oil prices are going to go through the roof. Peter Rouse says you can get a good discount when buying 1,000 litres. Yes. No shit. Definitely can. If you have the ability, I've got the ability to maybe store about 350 liters. That's the tank that I've got with my group. And then I have a series of 20-liter jerrys as well that I use at my home. So there's another location that I have that I store bulk. When you're starting to buy up big amounts like this, you can start to get good discounts, and that's something that I recommend people look into, really think about. Again, 1,000 liters though, do the calculations depending on what you're using: petrol, diesel. Diesel is going to last longer. Diesel can last probably about 12 months, no worries. Just by itself. Petrol, you're going to need to put additives in to make sure it lasts a little bit longer. And so think about that. How much fuel are you using per week? 60-liter tank, are you refueling once a week? Well, let's say you've got a 50-liter tank, or for the sake of easing my maths ability today, per week. So every 2 weeks you're going through 100 liters, 1,000 liters. That's going to take you how many weeks? Somebody can answer that. So then you can look at your storage and how long you're actually going to store that out for. So that's over a year period, like 50 weeks, obviously. 52 weeks. Thinking about that. Okay. Would 1,000 liters make sense? Then you can start to think about, well, maybe I can buddy up with someone. Maybe I've got more than one vehicle. Maybe then it starts to make sense. So instead of it being 1,000 liters is going to take me 200 weeks to get through, so that's 4 years. So that fuel would then need to be treated, and probably is not going to last that long. Well, if we've got 4 people that are involved in there, then all of a sudden, yeah, that would last us a year, or 6 people or 8 people. We start to bring that back down. Worthwhile thinking about, though. These are the sorts of things you want to think about if you want to extend your ability to utilize your motor vehicles in periods where fuel is going to be difficult to get. And these sort of periods include total societal collapse. Yes, definitely includes that. But it also includes natural disasters. It also includes spikes in prices in fuel. It also includes just supply disruptions within fuel. So all these things are worthwhile thinking about. Peter Rouse says the Range Rover has a 90-liter tank. You say, unfortunately, it's got a 90-liter tank. That's not. There's pros and cons, right? Pros and cons to everything. Tractor and side-by-side diesel also. Yeah. Both the vehicles that my family have are diesel. Most people in my sort of mutual assistance group diesel, and there's also some people who have diesel heaters as well. So it's good to kind of start to think about that when you're doing your long-term planning. Buying a vehicle or something, going, okay, well, what does everyone have within my group, or within my family, or what's going on here? Whatever sort of grouping you look at, what's the main fuel source that we're using, and can we start to bulk store that? All right, this one was an interesting one that I saw this morning. New wastewater technology to clean Great Barrier Reef with microalgae, which is a good story. This is good stuff. We've got a lot of runoff that's going from areas up in Queensland and probably northern New South Wales, from the farming practices up there, flowing into the ocean, and that's possibly destroying the Great Barrier Reef, which is disrupting people's snorkeling trips. So this is something we've got to fight for. It's very important to people. Obviously, there's a huge ecological effect here. I'm just being a bit tongue-in-cheek with it. But what are they doing? They're creating these huge, what would you call it, like purification farms, where the off-run water is then going into these purification farms, being cleaned by microalgae, and then being pumped out into the ocean, which is a great idea. That's awesome. Right? The issue I take with this is that we have to do this in the first place. That we're having to do this sort of stuff. What I kind of label this under is this idea that I've got called the reluctant controller or the reluctant conductor, really, where as human beings, we're messing with shit. And then we go, oh, shit, we fucked that up. Oh, now I'm going to have to fix it with this. Oh, now that's got that problem. So now I'm going to have to fix it with this. Oh, God, that had that unintended consequence. So now I'm going to have to fix it with this. And all of a sudden, we're like juggling balls, or the way I think of it is like we've got this control panel that we keep adding more buttons to, and we're constantly having to like, oh, God. At some point, our input is going to break down on this, and the whole system will break down. And it will be catastrophic failure of some sort. We are increasing complexity within our systems here. Whereas nature does this perfectly and does it without any effort. It does it in its own way. We're trying to become God, really, and stick our fingers into everything and then go, oh, shit. At some point, it fails. At some point, it breaks down. We are not God. We are humans. The more systems we try to control, the more complexity we add, and the more chance of catastrophic failure that we're creating. We need to actually, instead of trying to fix the problem and always chasing our tail and going, okay, well, that happened because of that. Now that happened because of that. Now that happened because of that. At some point, we actually need to start winding back and going, how do we actually just live simpler lives? How do we stop having more impact on the earth? i.e., how do we stop fucking everything that we touch? So I look at stuff like this and I'm like, okay, that's a cool idea, using microalgae to clean farming off-run. So then we can pump it into the ocean, and so it's not poisoned water and destroying the Great Barrier Reef, or whatever it's destroying, like everything. That's a great idea. I like that. Could we actually look at those farming practices at the start, or the water runoff at the start? Can we just stop that water runoff so much? Is that something we could think about right at the start? There are other ways to start tackling this problem as well, instead of just slapping band-aids on it. Holistic approaches, I think we need. This and this, not just this or this. This reminds me of cane toads. I read this and I go, this is cane toads. Again, that might not make any sense to anyone who's outside of Australia. Let me explain. In Australia, we figured out we had the conditions here to grow cane sugar. So we start growing cane sugar. And then this bug gets into it, the cane beetle, and it starts destroying the cane. And we go, oh, this is bad, because cane sugar equals money. What can we do? It has a natural predator, a cane toad. So let's introduce cane toads into the population. Cane toads get into the population, into Australia, get introduced, and they proliferate. They explode. And they don't even knock down the thing. Like, they kind of kill the beetles, but I'm pretty sure those beetles are still around. Anyway, cane toads got like poisonous skin. And so all the native wildlife starts eating them and dies. They proliferate and they go everywhere. If you go up into anywhere in Queensland, or far north Queensland especially right now, and you walk out your front door at night, the ground will be moving with cane toads. And they're friggin' indestructible. I used to live up in northern New South Wales. I saw a cane toad once and I was like, yeah, here we go. And I got a pitchfork out and I stabbed it. And it was dark at night. And I was like, right, well, that killed that. And I walked off. I came out in the morning. I was like, oh, yeah, that cane toad, pulled it out and it jumped off. Like, it hopped off with this hole in it. I had to chase it down and bash its brains in to make sure it was dead. But these things are everywhere. They mess with the natural habitat. But this is a prime example of how us chasing our own tails does not work. Us trying to fix problems that we created does not work. That we actually need to go back further than that and start to think like, how can we actually treat the source of the problem and not try and slap another band-aid on it. Good morning to you, Savage the Wild. Good to hear from you over in the States. Hope things are going well over there. With your little election cycle that's going on at the moment. Peter Rouse says, like introducing possums, rabbits, stoats, etc. into New Zealand, correct? they've not had, are having a pretty catastrophic effect on the wildlife and natural habitat within New Zealand. Same with in Australia, things like foxes, pigs, all that sort of stuff that got introduced, goats as well, into Australia. So yeah, seems like a good idea at the beginning, right? Yeah, let's do that. Kieran says, absolutely, mate. We got to scale it back and work with the earth. Dan Snow, hey, man. Hey, bro. How you going? You need a better pitchfork, bro. Definitely. Kieran says it's called a golf club, which is quite a infamous thing to do up in kind of far north Queensland, is go out at night and whoosh, hit cane toads around. All right, let's continue on. What else we got here? Hackers demand US $10 million for stolen Australian health records. So I talked about this when it first happened. Number of big hacks that have happened within Australia recently, Optus being probably the big one, and then Medibank, one of our private medical insurers, health insurer, got hacked, and about 10 million people who are in that service, their private records got discovered, and this hacker group started releasing their information and said, start paying us money or we're going to keep doing it. I don't know if they have done anything about it yet, but they have vowed, this hacker company has vowed to continue uploading more intimate details about its customers. I'd be pretty worried if I was part of this, if I was part of Medibank, or if I've even had health insurance, which I don't. I tackle health insurance from a different perspective. I invest in my health personally. I invest money and time and effort into my personal health by researching and looking at what would be better options for me to eat, by actually like going and testing my body out, by physically working out and doing things like that to keep myself in a fairly good condition, I guess. I call it's this crazy idea where it's called preventative medicine, where I try and keep myself in a pretty good health status to start off with. And then also put money away in a bank in my own account, so that if something does go catastrophically wrong, then I can pay for it. But anyway, that's just me. Other people don't think that's a good idea. They want to pay $150 a month to some other insurance company to look after them. Peter Rouse says, I just finished a 5K run in 20 minutes and 18 seconds. Bro, that is crazy fast. I wish my knees could keep up with that. I want to say my fastest I've done in the last couple of months is probably 24 minutes, and I was gassed after that. So way to go, man. 20 minutes. Speed McQueen, Peter Rouse. Love it. But I love to hear that sort of stuff too. If you've got personal achievements that are to do with health, wellness, prepping, let me hear them. Like, put this stuff out there and let's encourage each other to be better, stronger, fitter human beings. Kieran says, we've got to be, quote unquote, fighting fit. Literally, that's pretty much what I focus on. Like, a lot of my training is about, a lot of my training is about rehab, maintenance, and keeping my legs in a condition where I can go for hikes up and down goat country, which is bloody difficult, and not have my knees collapse in on me. But yeah, that sort of thing. Like, how do I keep myself fighting fit? What if I had to use my body to survive right now? Can I do that? So yeah, that's where I'm at. Personal responsibility for one's health, says Peter Rouse. Absolutely. That's what it's all about. I keep saying self-reliant human beings, but part of that, the other side of that coin is responsible. Be responsible for yourself on all fronts, as responsible for yourself on all fronts as possible. I find it irresponsible human beings that, all right, full disclosure, right? I try to be unbiased in my thinking as possible, knowing full well that I have biases. Biases? Anyway, I'm biased in some ways. all right, I'm never going to not do that because I have my own personal experiences. And I think to a certain extent, it's okay. Like, you have your own personal experiences. You can't view the world from a different person. View it from who you are. Carry your biases with you. Just understand that they're also there. Anyway, I don't care what color someone's skin is, like the pigmentation of your skin. What would that even factor in? I don't care what you have dangling in between your legs or not have dangling between your legs. I care what you can do. I believe in a meritorious world. And that is based off what your starting point is. What your starting point is, and then what you achieve from that. So thinking about that, my bias very much then falls into being a fattest. I look at people who are grossly overweight, not overweight people. It's like, okay, you can become overweight from circumstances or whatever, but grossly overweight people, and I kind of like go, nah, you kind of like go down a rung in my view of where you're going to sit in any hierarchy I have. I see it as irresponsible. That's what I see it as. I see it as utterly irresponsible. All those, people over the past 2 years that are being like, you people who didn't get a jab, you're the evil of the world. People are dying because of it. I'm like, the statistical data is not bearing that out. People are dying because they're fat and they get it. People are dying because they're old and they get it. It's not really anyone's fault. They can't stop age, but you can stop being fat. Anyway, that's my Friday morning rant for you. Health insurance, $10 million. Hackers are demanding. The interesting thing I thought about that I saw about this was that this company is sitting there going, we're not going to pay this, right? That's $10 million. We can't take that from our bottom line. The information is based on 10 million people. 10 million people's information, allegedly. And they're asking for $10 million. Now, we should know from the start of this SitRep that my maths is not great, but that equals out to $1 per person that they're asking for. I know that health insurance costs more than $1. So I know that this company has more than $10 million to their name. They could afford to pay it. I mean, of course, you don't want to give in to the demands of nefarious, evil people like this. But I'm just looking at this from a very practical standpoint. I'm like, just pay the money. Pay that money. You've got it. Why wouldn't you pay that money? Peter Rouse says the number of times I've been called a white supremacist. My wife and daughter are far from white. It's the latest label people like to use for anyone that disagrees with them. Yes, you far-right white supremacist. Yeah. I have copped that in the past, and misogynist. That's okay. That's all right. People are allowed to think what they think. I don't care. Iran. Let's talk about Iran for a second. I've talked about Iran quite a bit because Iran's been in the news quite a bit. From my perspective, at least, I'm like, Iran, I really feel, is punching above its weight. It doesn't seem like this huge country to me. It doesn't seem like it should be having the world effect that it is having at the moment. So there's one of two things I think that's happening here. Iran is punching above its weight. Iran is much more sophisticated, has much more money, has much more brain power than we would probably think, like the average person would probably think they do in the West, just because of the effect that they're having. Or the West wants us to believe that Iran is a great threat. Or maybe both. I don't know. But anyway, Iran has allegedly come out overnight and said that it has built hypersonic ballistic missiles that can punch through all air defenses. There is no air defense that could possibly stop their new hypersonic ballistic missile. that they've got a ballistic missile that could potentially strike US without being stopped. Couple this with Iran wanting to be a nuclear weapon state as well, and you see where this is going at this point. So, yeah, I don't know what to say. This Iran thing fascinates me. I'm not sure. Iran is a fascinating, complex country to me. There certainly seems to be a lot of threats that are coming out of Iran, but is it as much as what's being painted on the mainstream media at the moment? I don't know. All right, let's talk about the US. Let's get this one out of the way. Let's pull a Band-Aid off. What is going on in the US at the moment? So there's a prediction that the Republicans were going to sweep it. They were going to possibly get the Senate and the House. That has not happened. That has not happened at all. So it looks like the House, that's going to be Republican, but the Senate is going to be Democrat. So instead of seeing a big shift, instead of seeing a huge move, which everyone was sort of predicting, it's kind of been like a bit like, oh, that's the noise that I made when I read what's going on, and I said, oh, that's okay. That was less than what we thought. This is still playing out as we're looking at it, and I'm not in the US. I'm not a US citizen. I'm Australian. So it doesn't have a huge effect insofar as like politics for me. The interest that I have from this is the flow-on effects, which mainly at the moment I feel are like affecting the market. I don't know if anyone's had their eye on the market, but there's been some freaking weird movement coupled with some other stuff as well. So we've had the whole I'm not going to jump into this if you're not into crypto. Like this will make no sense I would just be saying letters and words. But FTX, Binance, that whole deal that went down, the fraud that is the whole FTX sham, and which I'm laughing at because it's the same fraud that the entire fiat money system is based on, and kind of more traditional market pundits are coming out and saying, "Oh, look at the fraud that they're doing," and blah blah blah. And I'm like, the thing that you said is fraud is exactly your Reserve Bank. How is that any different? But they're like, "Whoa, it's a fraud," and all of a sudden, crypto's gone like tanked. For example, Ethereum went from, I think it was almost at 2,500, if it didn't peak at 2,500, and I saw it hit 1,700, and that's within the space of 24 hours. So that's a pretty big drop. Looks like they might be doing a little bit of a rebound at the moment, but crypto's up in the air. There's billions of dollars at the moment flying up and down. The markets went up. The markets went up because they said, "Here we go. We're going to get a solid answer from our political sphere at the moment." So it didn't. I don't think it actually really mattered if it was solidly Democrats or solidly Republicans, but the Republicans looked like they were going to sweep, and so the markets reacted to that, and they're like, "Here we go, solidarity," and then they didn't, and it went, "Whoa!" And so we're starting to see these ripples in the markets now. So that's the interesting part for me through this. Peter Rouse says, buy land. Absolutely. Like, if you've got money, buy land. Do it. Do it now. A bit of information here from Peter Rouse. I wasn't aware of this. Currently at 48 seats to Democrat, 49 Republican, 2 states. You said that will go Republican? All right. We'll see. We shall see. But this is still landing, so could be more ripples within the markets to come in the not too distant future. I love gold and silver. Well, that has taken a bit of jump up, a market jump up, I would say. So interesting stuff there. Let's go with some China news now. China, not big news, but they've put out some a bit of a shift in their direction, I guess, of their entire military, where we're starting to focus on troop deployments overseas. Add this to the picture. That's another data point. Go, okay. All right. What are they saying? How are they moving? Those two are starting to match up. More China news. Let's talk about that property market, because this is market sort of stuff. This is quite interesting. New Chinese property support, no match for their whole. So another day, another measure to support the beleaguered Chinese property sector. I've talked about this in the past. The Chinese property sector is a huge front. It's a hole. It's going to collapse. I mean, I can't see how it's not going to collapse, but the only thing that has stopped it collapsing so far is that they are so controlled by their government. So the government is holding the facade up through sheer will. So they've pumped in another measure to try and hold it up again. And this is, if you're looking at these measures, it's kind of like, well, something's going to happen, and then they did one. And then a couple of months later, they're like, oh, they did something else. And then like 3 weeks later, they did something else. And then a couple of weeks later, did something else. Then a week later, they did something else. And a week later, they did something else. And a week later, they did something else. And a day later, they did something else. So you can see where it's going with it. It's like they are starting to get a bit more frantic now with pumping this thing up. Now, the thing I left out of that original headline that I said is the number of that hole that they're in. New Chinese property support, no match for $456 billion hole. All right, that's a pretty big hole. I don't know if you're going to be able to cover that one, guys. That eventually is going to be exposed. That eventually will cause a collapse. And like I've said before, Western markets are not immune to that happening just in China. Western markets are very exposed to Chinese markets. Chinese market is very exposed to Chinese property market. So as one falls, so will the rest of the dominoes. Some more numbers of big money. We're not in the billions now, we're in the millions, but this is Australian money, so millions are a lot to us here in Aussies, here in Australia. Price of Australian scrapped submarine deal is finally revealed, where we cancelled those French submarines, said no thanks, and I said we still had to pay out what it kind of was anyway, and then we shifted to the UK-US deal for nuclear subs. What's coming out? It's actually $591 million in additional expenses. So not only did we can the deal, not only did we not get the French subs, but we also had to pay $591 million for the privilege of getting out of that deal. Hey, whatever to keep the French happy, all right? Keep them happy. This was actually brought up by a senator from the Australian Greens who was complaining about it. Unsurprisingly, Green Party is very anti-military of any sort. They, in fact, want to scrap the military. They want to become a totally peaceful society. Good luck with that. Peter Rao says only $500 million. It's chump change. At the end of the day, it's chump change. Comparatively, as part of GDP and compared to other things that Australia spends on, it is literally chump change. That's the thing that I want to point out in this next part, because it was brought up by a Green senator who says, blah, 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 when we pay an extra $591 million for not building submarines, we lose those funds for public housing, schools, and income relief, aka communist ideas. Which, you know, the Green Party, I find amusingly called the Green Party. They do have a lot of environmental sort of stuff and the green ideas, but they should be called the Red Party because they are fully communist. And if you look at what Australia spends their money on, then it's exactly those things that he was talking about. So it's like, yeah, we can't spend that $591 million on these things, even though that was already in the defense budget. So it wasn't even sectioned off for this spending. They did shift it over into outside of the defense budget afterwards, but beside the point for now. We spend most of our money on this. We spend most of our money on welfare in Australia. So he's shaking his fist saying, well, we want to spend more money on welfare. By the way, we should probably tax everyone more so we can spend more money on welfare as well. To you, sir, I say. All right, last little thing, then I'm going to go. A couple of earthquakes that have happened. A 6.6 earthquake rocked Nepal. You should remember a few years back now, there was a huge earthquake that rocked this area as well. Caused a number of deaths. This one has caused, they've found at least 6 people have died from this one. So not good news. Also, earthquake, a 6.1 earthquake strikes off Italy's east coast. So another big one. And there's probably about 3 earthquake stories in the last week that I just didn't bother chucking up. But, coffee's gone cold. A lot of earthquakes going on at the moment. A number of the courses that I've been doing recently have I've had people from like Geosciences Australia, geologists, people who are earthquake experts, and I've been asking them, I'm like, you guys, is there more earthquakes? And they're like, well, yes, reluctantly they've said yes, there are more earthquakes at the moment, but they're very quick to say that this is not anything out of the ordinary, that quite often we have periods where there are not many earthquakes, and then periods where there are increased earthquake activities that are happening within like a cluster within a short period of time, being like 18 months or so, and that we're probably entering into or going through a period like that at the moment. Forewarned is forearmed. I think we are in a period like that at the moment. So if you happen to live in an earthquake-prone area like Peter Grouse does, who says we had an earthquake here last night, maybe a 1.0, then, prepare yourself. That's a natural disaster that you should be thinking about. All right, gang, I'm going to cut it there and get about my day. I hope you are doing well wherever you are in the world. Remember to keep safe, keep your eyes open. I won't be doing a SitRep for a number of days because I'll be out in the bush block doing stuff out there. But next week, I'll see you. Stay safe out there, keep prepping, and as always, thank you very much for joining me, and Semper Paratus.